Oh. Well, the UK today is grey and gloomy. This reminds me of Devon holidays when I was a young person with Emily, sitting in places like Sidmouth, inside our car with the windscreen wipers going like this and eating your fish and chips, and every now and again you press the windscreen button to clear the water and look at the seaside through the wind and the rain. Anyway, welcome to the internet, seriously a humorous look at tech, news and politics. I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford.
I'm Emily Taylor in Oxford.
And I'm
Hooray!
Alice Taylor in Oxford.
She's back!
We have
She's
Alice
back!
back. Where is it, guys? Oh, we've got fewer special effects today, so I didn't think that we were going to see confetti there. But Alice, welcome back. So coming up, from theory to reality, the latest strides in practical homomorphic encryption. We discuss New York University's breakthrough in this technology. Next, HMRC is hit by a £47 million phishing scam and 100,000 accounts are compromised. What's going on there? Finally, 2 million swipes, one date. Is online dating broken, or is humanity broken? Before we move on from the chewy topics to the fun topics, please, we haven't got buttons today because we're testing new technology, but please subscribe to this channel or follow us on Apple Podcasts or other channels, and rate and review us, particularly if you like us. We need your support. Thank you. So I'm going to start with homomorphic encryption. I've picked this deliberately because I don't think girls should be excluded from tech.
Thank you.
The tech topics, it's all, it's very difficult. I was at a Joe Tidy book launch, which we're going to mention briefly later. That's the correspondent from the BBC who deals with tech. And he was basically saying that hacking and hackers' world and coding is generally a boy's job and a boy's world. Here we are at the internet, seriously trying to break that mold, and no techie topic is off limits when non-boys are around. So, okay, let's try and make sense of this.
Lucian, what is homomorphic encryption? Or shall we get Alice to explain it, or me to explain it?
Let's get Alice. Alice, what's your thoughts? Just really
I don't know
broad
what
brushstrokes.
it is, but I know what you can do with it.
Yes,
So-
that's right. I'm not a mathematician either, so I
Sorry,
was
the guys
going
were just
through
really excited
about
then
the
because they've got the confetti is back.
nice. That was so nice.
And the keyboard is back. Goodness me. Yeah.
Lucian, can you confirm, as the man in the room and therefore technically able, also having the maths and computing degree compared to classics and English literature, sitting around the table, could you explain could you confirm that homomorphic encryption is a way of performing some functions on encrypted content so that somebody who doesn't have access to that content is able to in some way derive some information from it?
Yes.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
great.
Right, so we've dealt with what it is then.
In particular, an application
On to the
could
next
be
topic.
for the sort of content that is private, a private exchange, but in an end-to-end encrypted messaging app.
Yes.
Or perhaps images that it would be illegal for most people to view.
What things like
images of child abuse, but
Yes.
you might want to, as an investigator, understand some information about them.
Yes.
So that's correct. Can you tell us what the breakthrough that you referred to by NYU, New York University, is?
Yeah, their Tandon School of Engineering, their Orion framework for encrypted AI was officially published last month, and I'm quite excited about this in a geek way, but also because of the global signal exchange which we founded. We're finding a way of sharing data and unlocking this real problem, this real quagmire of privacy and data privacy, but being able to share intelligence across platforms. If you can imagine, Alice, you worked in the health service. Obviously, there is, we have stories about the reality of the health service, a place with lots of technology, depending upon lots of technology, and no money. But the principle is that you need to balance this thing of research, so understanding private data without that data becoming available.
Yeah, exactly. That was the thing that I'd sort of read up about, was like, let's say you're doing health research and you've got lots and lots of people's medical records, obviously private. As a researcher, you're not interested in, these 700 people with diabetes live in this area of England, or this, and they've got this type of dog, or that, you don't care about that information, and it's almost a way of kind of keeping it all safe, but you can still do
I
stuff
push back. You
with
may
their
want to know
data.
the generic demographics of those patients.
Yeah, well, you've got the data that you want, and the data that you don't want to look at, you want to keep private, and so it's a way of doing stuff with people's data without actually going into it.
And I guess it also provides a level of assurance and quality assurance, but also sort of governance for the data subjects, as I would call them, the patients, as you would call them, because it means that you can guarantee that a researcher hasn't accessed the documents themselves.
The researcher
you can protect the researcher from that suspicion. Because I agree with you, when you're doing large-scale analysis, you really don't care about the things you don't care about. But it's very disconcerting for an individual to feel like all of their stuff is open to the world.
Yeah, or that as a researcher you might accidentally see a load of data that you're not supposed to, and this kind of allows that protection.
What is the breakthrough, Luz?
Well, the breakthrough aspect is that it's what they call fully homomorphic encryption, which is like making your data in your server like a black box, and so you can actually do derivative data from it. You can run queries on it, but you can't actually see the data. But it's been too slow and computationally expensive. And Orion, this new thing, tackles this by converting standard AI models into fully homomorphic encrypted compatible programs, which in geek talk means that you can work with it with Python and stuff, and also it's significantly reducing how the data is handled and reducing the overhead, and it's basically making it more practical and more efficient. And you could, the geeks who love AI love their Python tools, and it's just enabling it to sit this homomorphic encryption within their usual toolkit. And I think that ability to reduce the friction for implementation is going to be really key for the global signal exchange, and really, really welcome, because if data sharing partners in fighting scams and fraud, for example, say anything, it's that the cost of implementation, the cost of integrating with systems, the cost of sharing is too much. Now, what you're going to be doing with homomorphic encryption is you're going to be saying to third parties, maybe banks, we want to know what's happening. We want confirmations from activities on your servers without you compromising customer account data, highly sensitive data. But we want to know where demographics are, where clusters of bad activity is happening. But what we're asking them to do is recode their database. Now, I'm worried about the paradoxical effect of these benefits. If in fact the fact that there is homomorphic encryption means that that's something they've got to do, and it's going to take them 55 years to do it. And it just becomes another sort of, yes, the only way that we could achieve what you want, and we're fully supportive of this, is by investing $3 trillion in our organisation.
Once we've done the taxonomy work, which will take 15 years. But Lucy, and Alice, one of the things that is exciting to me, at least in theory, about the advent of much more accessible, cheaper, more efficient homomorphic encryption would be, maybe this is an answer to what's been a 30-year circular firing squad, my phrase of the week, about lawful access to encrypted content. So how it goes is the police say to the owners or controllers of fully encrypted content, give us access to your content. They say, we don't have it, and even if and they create a back door so that only we can read it. They say, no,
That's
are you in
allowed.
favour of everybody being insecure in
Yeah.
the whole world and bank robbers being able to steal money? No, obviously, but I want that data. And the other, the circular firing
circle.
squad is like, oh, okay, you're not giving us access to your data. You are
want
obviously
criminals to-
next.
yeah.
You want criminals to thrive, and you want everything to go to hell in a handcart. And so, hopefully, a way of querying fully encrypted data that doesn't reveal the underlying data is a good thing,
Very
and
good.
is a way to open up something that really shouldn't be. Those two parties ought to be on the same side of the table in certain
Yes,
circumstances.
and Alice, do you know many techs who aren't into AI?
Not really.
You talk to a lot in our office.
yeah,
You are a
yeah.
tech yourself, and
Yeah.
AI, chat,
It's
Gemini
it's
are
well,
part of the
starting to
world.
be
It's become the
integrated
new
now.
Google, really. It's.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends who are very anti-AI, and a lot of people who are very pro-AI, and I think really it's just kind of inevitable now. It's in our lives. It's just going to become
Yeah.
more and more in our
So
lives.
there are these interrogation tools that help you set up these neural networks and learning models. They're pretty much developed and used by a product called PyTorch, which was developed by Meta, the AI department, but given over to open source and now is now managed through the Linux Foundation. But I'm very excited about PyTorch is the world that they're all geeking away in, developing these AI models, and it allows developers within homomorphic encryption to include that in their build and modify neural networks on the fly, which is like you want to change your learning models. It's a bit like an aircraft taking off with a pilot and an engineer, modifying the aircraft as you fly so that it makes even better,
Into
even
Dumbo.
even
Wouldn't that
cooler
be great if
landing.
you
Wings fallen off. Let's build a new one.
We are bored of this subject now. Now we're moving
no,
from aircraft
we're
to
not.
Dumbo.
I
But
thought it would
actually-
be great if you
actually-
could change your aircraft into Dumbo mid-flight. That would be so cool.
This is very funny. So thank you for that, for the geeky tech talk and giving that the seriousness and time that it deserves. Before we move on to our next one, it's time for our guilty pleasure online. Thank you very much. I was so pleased to hear the sound of that. It's totally
Yes,
different
it's
when you get the titles
beautiful.
with the sound.
Lucian, can you share with us your this week's guilty pleasure online?
I noticed the innuendo in there with this week's, because normally it's this week's Tech Room 101.
For
Who are you going to
Lucian.
whinge about this
We
week?
banned you.
Yeah, I thought I
Banned
did.
you from having
yeah.
Tech Room 101s.
I'm really
from now
full
on.
of myself and clever today because I did quite a clever bridge about airlines and
Ah,
Dumbo.
interesting,
Because my Tech
yeah.
Room 101 is I've discovered, it's not an ongoing thing, sorry, this is my guilty pleasure online, it's a real love for airline guru loyalty program gurus. That's a really, really bad way of saying
What's
it.
that?
What
Tell
is
us
that,
about
Lucy?
it.
Airline loyalty program gurus. Okay, so if any of you, Alice, are you aware of the British Airways Club Class saga?
No.
Tell
me about
Alice, a lot of BA Gold members are very, very upset.
Oh,
Can you find space in your
Oh.
heart to feel pity for their
I
plight?
really do. I think this is. Well,
No.
I want to hear about this because it sounds
Yeah,
very sad.
Maybe we could just hand over to you, Lucian,
Thank
and you
you.
can share your
Yeah.
pain with us.
Thank you very much. For those of you who do a lot of travel and are on the spectrum, you know that for some time there's been a way of getting yourself into the posh lounge at British Airways, fast tracking through security and getting first onto the plane by just hacking the whole system and figuring out how to do the fewest number of flights.
Let me just a brief clarification
And?
point. By hacking, do you mean actual
Hacking?
unlawful behaviour, or do you mean understanding how the system works and gaming it?
Yeah, fair point. Thanks. Yeah, no, I feel really shit about that. Thank
That's
you.
really good.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. By intensely studying the terms and conditions of the service.
Made it sound
I
really
don't. I
cool.
think somebody's
It's-
got to look up the
yeah.
meaning of hacking. Does it mean unlawful? Let's get that straight for a start. If it does, I apologise this week, and I will officially apologise at the beginning of next week's
Okay,
show. But
Google it
anyway, it is basically studying the terms and conditions of the thing and figuring out a way of gaining the most miles and tier points with the fewest flights. And there are many ways of doing it by pursuing offers and bargains and flying at odd times of the day. And some of the gurus were able to get themselves into gold tiers for £3,000. And that's a sort of target that they all set themselves, how to get gold for 3K and all of this. Now, British Airways have closed that loophole and made it impossible to get to gold
Miserable.
tier unless you spend lots of cash, and you've got to spend £20,000 a year to get into gold. So everyone's like, rip goes my gold thing, and they're now scouting around and advising each other on new airline loyalty schemes to join. And I just love watching hours and hours of them. So Finnair has really the old British Airways way through, but also other benefits. So I'm just, I just find it absolutely hysterical.
Well, I've got
Anyway.
the definition of hacking if we're
Oh yes,
interested.
thank you, Alice.
The gaining of unauthorized access to data in a system or computer.
I don't think unauthorized is
Unauthorised.
necessarily unlawful.
And then the example of it
Well,
in
anyway.
a sentence, outlawing hacking has not stopped it, which implies
Yeah,
that
I
perhaps it's not
actually.
I
unlawful.
didn't feel like you were using hacking in that way.
Seriously,
metaphorical.
my world is actually anti-hacking, and
Yeah.
it's a toxic subject. So I'm actually fully corrected in front of millions
just
of
got
people,
cancelled.
and I really,
Yeah.
really
You just got
appreciate that.
cancelled.
Next up, this is well, we're going from the more stodgy topics to the more fun topics, but Her Majesty's Revenue has been hit by a £47 million phishing scam involving 100,000 accounts. This is sad. This is worrying. I don't know what.
That's
I'm
you in the
looking-
gold lounge
Is that
with the
me?
frequent
A sort of
flyer
AI
of
of me in the gold
Yeah.
lounge. Do people get to see that without my head in front of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a sort of. Oh
They've
my
done
God!
your
Look at
teeth.
what AI thinks
Yeah,
I am.
they've
I
done
think
your
they've
teeth.
improved my
They've done your teeth and
They've made
your
me
skin
like.
as well.
They've
You've
turned
got
me
a
into
sort of-
Emily's uncle. But anyway, there you go.
Yeah, nice.
It was not. It was done by phishing, not a direct cyber attack. Basically, it revealed organised crime groups successfully stole £47 million. They're saying it's not actually the individuals that are going to have suffered this loss. It's the HMRC themselves.
Hang on a second. Where does the HMRC get its money from,
Yeah.
Alice?
Us?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Us.
So,
So it's actually all of us who've lost that.
impacting.
Lost
I've got
£47 million.
I've got some comparisons of major heists and the value of major heists. So the Hatton Garden robbery, do you remember that a few years ago, where they drilled through the wall and stole loads of actual jewellery from
It's like
Hatton
Mission
Garden?
Impossible.
£14 million estimated.
Wow.
1-4.
This is where they drove a truck into the wall or crawled
I
through
think
a small tunnel from next
yeah,
door.
they went through a tunnel. And the
Yeah.
Great Train Robbery, if that happened today, that was in
Mm.
1963, hugely, I mean, they made films about it. The value at the time was 2.6 million. The value today would be about 45 to 50 million. So this heist is about the same commercial value as the Great Train
Isn't
Robbery.
it interesting? Because you just hear the words "the Great Train Robbery" and you're like, I want to watch that as a film. It sounds amazing.
Yes.
And now
The
it's like
HMRC
the
phishing
HMRC has
scam.
been fished, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Oh my
that's
God.
like the most boring thing
Well,
ever.
Alice,
Do you
why-
think that's making it easier
Well,
for
this
people
point, why do you think we're inoculated almost and desensitized through
to? Yeah.
huge?
Well, when you hear words like phishing, I think a part of your brain just switches off because you're like, oh God, you know.
Yeah.
I remember in the NHS, you'd be taught one year, like, if you receive what looks like a phishing email, send it to our phishing email inbox. And then the next year, they'd say, so what do you do if you get phished? And you'd be like, send it to the phishing inbox. And they'd be like, no! What are you, a criminal?
Yeah, right.
Delete
Right.
it. Don't
Yes.
send it, because that shares it. And it's like everything to do with phishing, everything to do with scams and spam. It just feels like it's everywhere. And anything you do
It's hopeless.
is hopeless and wrong.
Right.
And also
yeah.
the sort of the terminology of like scam and phishing all sounds trivial and all sounds like it's your fault.
Yeah, and
So-
this is 47 million
Yeah.
pounds.
Emily,
taxpayers'
let's
money.
think about this in terms of what we know about scams and fraud. A phishing attack involving the HMRC. I wanted you to talk a bit about our research and the power of brands in what they call phishing links, the links that people click on, which they think are from someone else like the HMRC. The power of brands in links, and also the concept of selective scrutiny.
Yeah, thanks. We did some focus groups recently, a couple of years ago, I think, with a sort of balanced group who represented the general population in the UK, all sorts of ages, social backgrounds, educational backgrounds. And one of the most interesting aspects for me was when we presented them with either, sort of examples of
Like a phishing
text,
email.
phishing
Yeah.
emails, phishing texts. Think of a text message, you have very little other stuff to go on, very little what we'd say extraneous clues to tell you whether or not something's genuine. And if they saw a link with something like HMRC hyphen login garbage, blah blah blah, they go, oh, the HMRC one, yeah, I definitely would have gone for that. And when they see the brand, they almost don't see everything else. And it really, what are brands? And do you remember we did that information integrity roundtable a few months ago? And one of the participants said that actually brands were invented in the context, in the 1900 on the 1800s. They were invented to try and combat a complete crisis of trust about the provenance of goods and services, particularly goods. So if you've got your Bass beer, Bass was the very first trademark ever registered in the UK. That it comes from that source, and it seems that using them in links, using brands in links, has the same kind of magical effect of allaying people's concerns. You talked about selective scrutiny. How long do you normally take to decide whether or not something
Alice, how long do you
is
take when you look at something, maybe an email, it might be from your grandmother or it might be from a phishing company. How long do you take to scan the emails to
think-
determine their value or a message?
Me personally, the research suggests that most scams happen within about 2 to 3 minutes
Yes.
of contact. I've been scammed. I was a victim of identity theft. It was
Yes.
horrendous. And I think...
Not much money.
No, what happened, Alice?
So what I think was the cause, but actually all they needed to do this was they needed my name and address.
That was it.
I fill in my name and address
multiple
daily on different websites. What I think was the cause, this was back in the pandemic when text scams were a really new thing, and I fell for it, and I just felt so stupid because I clicked on a link it was one of those scams of like, your package is being delivered, you need to pay £1 for shipping fees or whatever, and it was so new, no one had heard about it, and I clicked on the link and it looked like it said royalmail.com, and actually it said Royal Mail with a capital I to look like the L, and I'd filled in my personal details into it, but for all I know it could have been anything else.
I'm
I don't know what it
interested
was.
that you said you felt so stupid
Yeah.
and you fell for it.
Yeah.
These are crimes that people describe themselves as falling for, like they're stupid, and that came through in the focus group as well.
Yeah.
How did you feel? We put together the reactions of people, and they all said stupid, 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 stupid.
Yeah.
And they blame themselves, but it's not their
Like
fault.
falling for a trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because that's the reality, is scammers are always changing their methods. So you might think that you're someone who's quite cybersecurity aware, and there's always something new that you haven't thought of, that nobody's thought of, that some scammer might dream
Always
up.
something
that
How
new.
can
long
get
did
you.
it take you to become aware of the identity theft?
2 years.
2
Right,
years.
Yeah.
And what
Slow and low.
triggered when did you
When my
realise?
bank denied me an overdraft, and I was like, what? And they said, oh, because of your credit score. And I was like, my credit
What?
score?
So you had to reverse engineer.
I had to go to all these different Experian, and there's 3 can't even remember what they're called.
Credit
But for a
score
while, they were
reference
running
agencies.
my life. I had to get a Norton account. You know, each of these you have to pay money to set up, and my
Wow.
credit score was like that of a criminal, because what the identity theft people, the criminals, had done is set up a load of mobile phone contracts in my name. So they'd take out their O2 contract. They'd be like, "It's Alice. She owes you £2,000. Bye," and then just left it for me to have to.
A nightmare for
pieces years
everybody
later.
that we're all trying to deal with. Before we're running out of time, before I get on to the topic that I really want to talk about, which is one that you raised, Alice, it's time for our Tech Room 101. Room 101. Alice Taylor, what is your Tech Room 101? What would you like to throw in the tech bin or lock behind in a sort of jail forever?
This is going to sound really silly, having just been talking about like my identity theft journey, but it's something that really annoys me, and it's something that I'm like, somebody's going to figure out how to solve this. Is when you're typing on your phone, let's say like you're looking for like a Tesco product, and you type, I don't know, like apples, and then there's a little list, a drop-down list of
Yes.
things, and you're like, oh great, apples is there, and you go to click on it, and just as you're about to press it, it like refreshes the search.
Oh, I
and
hate
then
that.
as you're pressing it, you're pressing something else, and it's like
And
apple
then-
pie, and you're like, no, I didn't,
then-
and then it has to load, and then it gives you all the apple pie results, and you're like, I just wanted apples.
And for
And
the
then you
next
have to
month,
start again.
you
That
keep
sounds
looking at. We know that you like
Apple
apple
pies.
pie.
I feel like this happens to me on like a daily basis.
I love
you
this.
know.
So what? This
Yeah.
is on search, is it?
Yeah,
Or
and it's not just like
is it the AI
Tesco.
result, or is it?
It's anything that has a search feature. So, you know, when you
Oh.
Google something, you start typing and it comes
Yeah,
down
yeah.
with a little list.
Ooh.
And something like Google is quite sophisticated, so it just presents you with your list and the list stays.
Yes.
But something like, I don't know, if you're searching on Deliveroo or like another
For
app,
example.
there's the search drop down itself.
I know.
Is like it refreshes.
Oh, how awful!
as
We're
an
running out of
before
time.
you press
Thank you
it.
very
It's-
much. And
It's
actually,
awful. That just
actually,
sounds traumatizing.
that reminds me of another thing which I don't really admit, but I actually like on email, because I'm bad at writing.
When it suggests
the
the words.
suggesting, and I don't know how to accept it. I'm
Also,
just like,
how
that's
do-
exactly what I want to write. How do I accept it? And then it disappears.
I
But
also
anyway.
I know quite a few people called Tom, and for some reason, the autocorrect thinks nobody in the world is called Tom. They're all called Tim. So every time I
Absolutely.
write
Yeah.
You meant
Tom,
Tim.
it autocorrects to Tim.
That's idiocy. 2 million swipes, but one date.
Oh,
Is online dating broken, or is it humanity itself that's broken? Alice, tell us a bit about this.
So this is a story about a man called Hayden, who is 26, and he is a fishing and snake enthusiast. Yeah, and he swiped right on 2 million Tinder profiles and got one date. So we did a bit of maths earlier. So 2 million swipes, he got 2,000 matches of those 2 million. So that's quite a lot that didn't swipe right on him. But he then got 1,200 chats, which resulted in one date. So there's a lot of people saying, is this a tech issue, or is this a skill issue, a personality? So here we have a flow diagram of his
Okay.
experience. So this Tinder gives you these results. So it's like you
Can you just
swipe-
describe what
Yeah,
people
so what
on
we're looking
podcasts
at
are looking
is,
at? Is there a sort of
So it says you swiped, 2 million times, and it has a little tree branching of that. You got, you swiped 2 million times right.
right swipes,
Swiped
left
left 38,000 times. So this is over 5 years.
right.
So this is about 1,000 swipes a day.
right.
Wow,
Again,
gosh.
we're getting a bit of
Hayden.
information about this
Hayden.
person. 2,053 matches, and sort of 2 million not matching, 1,000 chats, 700 no chats, and 1 date.
Oh,
So there are two sides to this story.
Yeah.
One is that that this is saying, some are saying this is an ultimate example of male loneliness epidemic, a growing crisis where men are reporting fewer friendships, less intimacy, and a deep sense of isolation. And that the apps have become digital deserts for many men with a match rate of 0.6 compared to women who have a match rate of 10%. So like an order of magnitude of difference between what men are looking for and offering and what women are looking for and offering. I don't know if either of you want to comment on that, but there's the other is that the other side of that is that this illustrates so-called male loneliness epidemic is another exhausting example of the belief that all men are deserving of emotional or romantic rewards regardless of their toxic behavior. And it's not so much about isolation as it is about entitlement. From your story with Hayden, do you think that was about his sense of entitlement?
Well,
I mean, it sounds quite an aggressive
So do we have the
take,
picture of his profile, Igor, which I think might offer us a few more insights into why the 2 million swipes resulted in one match. So we can see here, this is Hayden's profile.
He looks
well,
like
he's
a very nice person.
Yeah,
nice,
well, that
happy person
we were
with a large
discussing, we thought,
fish.
you know, I would say physical attractiveness is something that you shouldn't really quantify,
No,
but you know,
it's in the mind.
yeah,
it's
he's
in the eye of
holding
the
a big
beholder.
fish, and it
Yes.
says, if you're not trying to go fishing, I don't want it. My idea of a vacation is going to the desert and looking for snakes for a week. I
Ooh.
may or may not currently own 33 snakes.
Right,
Oh.
okay. So
And then we have
Gosh.
another picture of his profile, where he's
Again with the
wearing a shirt that's got quite a rude
Oh.
joke on it, which
right.
Sit
Yeah.
your
I'm not going to
ass
read.
on my
Okay,
face.
well, there we
Okay.
go.
So,
I wasn't going to read it out, but so
well, okay. Strengths and weaknesses
Strengths
in
and
that
weaknesses,
marketing.
yes.
Strengths. He's out there. He's put
Yeah.
it on the.
I feel like there's a person out there for him, myself.
Someone
but
who
a lot
likes
of people are
fish
saying
and snakes,
if
maybe.
you've
Yeah.
spoken to 2,000 people and you've got one date out of that, that kind of says something about your personality, perhaps.
Or
That there's
possibly-
qualities, toxic behaviour, maybe. But regardless, I do want to talk about the male loneliness epidemic because it is a big talking point, you know, on spaces like TikTok. There's a lot of people, personally, like me, who are like, whatever, you know, we've joked about female loneliness for decades. Crazy cat lady is a stereotype we use. Suddenly, when it's men, we're all supposed to panic. And I think increasingly as people, you know, are more open with their true sexuality, as heterosexuality isn't the norm anymore. Women are becoming financially independent. They don't need to just marry a man for their livelihood. There is this sense of women unburdening themselves of having to look after men, having to be their mother and wife and friend and therapist.
lover, nurse, and
Nurse,
maid.
and maid. And so there is this big kind of gender issue.
Sorry, my wife. My wife just
Nodding away.
nodded at me with a sense of yes to every single
I'm
one
a
of them.
very lucky woman. I'm a very lucky woman. But I was just reflecting as you were talking, Alice, on a series that we've been watching called Masters of Sex, which is actually about two sex researchers in the 1950s and 60s. And what it's fascinating about is the sort of the norms of those days and that's what being a wife meant. What being a wife meant was really, you know, bye dear at 6 or 7 in the morning, and then if he came home at all because he was working late with his assistant,
Yeah.
then he would like come in, fix himself
Spotless
a drink
house,
to the
dinner on
spotless
the
house.
table.
The baby would be asleep,
Of course.
and you know, and also these clever women who are just sitting there, just absolutely depressed, totally rotting in this. You know, for some people that is exactly the life that they
Yeah,
want, and they
Of
thrive in
course,
it.
Yeah.
Not everybody. That's not
Well,
everybody.
it's all
when it's
down
socially
to if
demanded.
it's a choice.
Yes.
You can choose to do that, and that can be your life's passion.
But I also, the example also made me think about Joe Tidy's book, Control Alt Chaos, and
Oh,
we went to
interesting,
his
yes.
book launch this week.
What a nice book.
And one of the things that came up in the questions and answers is, are there any girl hackers? Because this is about teenage hackers. So these are boys and girls who are being drawn into a life of crime. Are there any girls in these groups? No. Why not? Because one or two who might, you know, try and enter into the brotherhood, they turn up on the forums and they are
attacked.
just horrendously attacked.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Mm.
But I do reflect that a lot of family life and a lot of social life is now silent. We were sitting in a restaurant the other day, and you know, a lot of people in the restaurant. You go out to a restaurant to have a meal out and have a social time, and a lot of the people in the restaurant were just on their phones silently, and that just feels like such a different way of living.
I have a response to that,
Okay.
which is, yes, our lives have changed. We're more online than we ever have been. This is affecting everyone. This isn't just affecting men. And yet, the male loneliness epidemic seems to be this specific thing. And I watched, there was a sort of a documentary where this researcher was saying, like, the incel demographic have always been a bit of a problem for all societies. And traditionally, we'd send them all off and be like, you're going to be priests now.
Yeah.
You're very important with your priest. Off you go, all just be together. The people that can't, you know, get a heterosexual wife who looks after them. Or you're all going to be explorers. You're all going to go and discover a country, go to the Antarctic, you know. Bye-bye, off you go. Give them something to do. Put them in the army. And this whole thing, I thought it was interesting, the ratio, you know, we're talking about TINDER, this is all very heteronormative, but the match rate for men being 0.6% and the match rate for women being 10%.
Yeah.
So that is telling us the story that there are a lot fewer women on these dating
must
apps.
be,
When
yeah.
they go on, they've kind of got the pick of the litter,
Yes.
whereas there's a lot of men who I would say are floundering with our new, more modern society where women aren't expected to do these roles. It's kind of like the women are dealing with their loneliness by just kind of getting on with their lives and going off and doing stuff, looking after themselves. The men are kind of stuck and needing to be looked after, and it's kind of because it's like, women, why aren't you looking after us? We're too lonely.
There's another angle I wanted to think about, which was, I remember when I was an out-of-work actor and we were bored as men, we wouldn't go on dating apps, we'd just get together and do stuff. We'd go bowling, we'd play cards. And there is a founder of a new in-person dating app and friendship network in Oxford called Date IRL, Date in Real Life. But Mitch, the founder of it, has hidden his surname for some reason. But he's established this network, and it's really for people to meet partners and friends because of people's huge fatigue, quotes, with dating apps. And for them, he's saying the shock of leaving university and then going into a job and then just nothing physically social happening is causing a huge problem. And what they're, you know, nobody prepares you for what they call the magnitude of the shift, going from a very engineered social environment like university into a job where you kind of everyone runs home at the end of the day. And they're trying to actually engender meetups in pubs and doing
I think it's got a name which is the lack of third place. So it's like you've got your home, your job, and your third place, bowling, your
The
card
pub.
group, the pub where
and you
just
discover
go.
friends, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, and you
Friends of
you have a
friends.
you're not stuck in a dinner together dating. You're actually playing a game, and you kind of gravitate to people that you have more
but also,
chemistry with.
it's more than just a connection with one person. It's a community, a meaningful community, and I do think that you know, part of this story is that sadness of that being lost. But it does sound like this isn't the first kind of IRL Tinder or friendship app I've heard of. I've heard of ones where it's like you go to a restaurant and you wear like an armband or something that shows that you're here to meet people or you're part of this kind of app, as it were. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
We are now totally over
Totally
and out
busted
of
our
time.
time.
We do every week anyway. Do we have a comment of the week?
Yes, we do.
Oh, great.
This is on our Is This the End for M&S video.
Oh, yes.
This is Andre Murray 7039 who says, Marks have got their rear end kicked. Everything done on the cheap. 22 million off our maintenance. Don't invest in the store, so they are their worst enemy.
Ooh,
Right.
controversial opinion there,
yeah.
Andre. Thank you for the comment.
Andre 7039, not
any
7040. But thank you very much. All comments are welcome, and I think this is an interesting point. I mean, those who feel negative about superstores anyway have that point of view. For me, I think the destruction of the 50% stock of an industry is, you know, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
Mixed feelings. I do feel that the beep machine replacing the actual till people, that's happening everywhere, and Marks and Spencer's isn't immune to that. But I do feel of all the supermarkets, my personal opinion, Andre, and thanks for yours, is that Marks and Spencer's seems to be a little bit more in the kind of investing in its people and stock, but I don't know behind the scenes.
Thank you very much. Well, we've had a super podcast today. I'm really pleased to have Alice back and younger voices around the table. We really need you to engage in the internet seriously, having fun, and also these serious topics, because as we see, you know, the internet is controlling all of our lives, and we need these discussions to happen. Today we've been talking about homomorphic encryption, HMRC in the UK being hacked with a £47 million phishing scam, and a poor chap who did 2 million swipes on Tinder and only got one date. Thank you very much.